Welcome back. Lawmakers from across the country are weighing in after a huge week in Washington, including President Donald Trump's missile strike on Syria. Kentucky Congressman Yarmuth joins us now with his take on these issues. Good morning to you, Congressman.
Good to be with you.
I appreciate you so much. Yeah. First questions with Syria, your immediate reaction when you heard the president order the strike against his country.
Well, I know because I actually was texted, and my response was probably a good move. I have questions about the legality and whether Congress should have been engaged earlier, but I think what the president was trying to do, and I shouldn't try to guess what's in his mind because that's dangerous territory, but I think probably this was aimed at Russia as even more so than at Syria, to try and say to Russia, you agreed to keep chemical weapons out of Syria's hands, and you obviously have failed, and we're not going to let it go, so you need to get on the case. That's my guess as to what they were really trying to accomplish.
Okay, so help us make sense of this from some critics. There's a travel ban that the president tried to implement. Syria was on that list. We've known about these issues for years in Syria. Why this airstrike right now?
Well, I think, again, I hate to try to guess what's in the president's mind, but the attack that I guess it was Monday or Tuesday on civilians that killed children, it clearly affected the president and his moral outrage. So that was good to see. The problem with Syria, as it has been for the last 4 or 5 years, is that there is no good answer. And the question about, everybody agrees that President Assad needs to go, that he's a horrible person and a horrible leader. Nobody knows what happens next if he's deposed. And I know that the Obama administration played out every possible scenario as to how things might happen, and they came up with the answer that virtually everyone was probably worse than keeping him in power. So while you have a humanitarian crisis there, and we along with the rest of the world should try to deal with that, the actual answer to the Syria problem is nowhere to be found.
Okay. You kind of alluded to it, but I'm going to ask you, with Senator Rand Paul, his statement kind of said what you said about Congress should have been consulted first. Expand on that a little bit.
Well, the War Powers Act, which is in the law, requires Congress to approve any military, any act of war. So that's a murky area, whether what we did the other day was an act of war. I suspect most people would consider it one. I think it is.
Okay.
The president, under the War Powers Act, has the authority to act, and Congress has up to 60 days to approve or disapprove of it. And if they don't approve of it after 60 days, he can't do it anymore. On the other hand, I think that the proper thing to do would now be for the president to come to Congress and say, I want you to approve retroactively what I did, and then be willing to approve whatever strategy I devise for going forward.
But that's out of order, right?
It's out of order, but from my perspective, I think it would actually reestablish Congress's prerogatives in this area, and I think it would be the right thing for the president to do. Okay. Which means he probably won't do it.
Okay. Well, one last question with the refugees, Congressman. So many of them call Kentucky home. What would you say to them? We've seen so many rallies. We have some video of the rallies that have been going on. They probably feel a little unsettled, maybe?
Well, I've talked to a number of Syrian refugees. I talked to some Syrian expats last night. Okay. And they are very concerned, but they don't really know what the answer is to. Many of them still have relatives in Syria, some in refugee camps there. So they're very concerned about the future of their country and their families and friends who are still there. I think they would like to see the United States become more aggressive. But again, the question you always have to ask is, if we get more aggressive and go in and take Assad out, what happens next? Who takes over? The United States doesn't want to run Syria, that's for sure.
The aftermath is a concern.
And the intelligence is that the resistance movement may be every bit as bad as Assad for the country. And of course, there's a possibility that ISIS would move in and take over the country. So again, there are really no good answers.
Such a complicated issue. Another big concern I want to talk to you about on Washington, the confirmation of the new Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch. The rules were changed specifically for this nominee. Your thoughts on the nuclear option?
Well, I think it's unfortunate. This all came about because Senator McConnell, the majority leader of the Senate, did an unprecedented thing and denied President Obama the right that the people who elected him demanded for him to replace Justice Scalia after his death. It's totally unconscionable what he did. That being said, we are where we are. Okay. There's an opening. The president appointed Neil Gorsuch, and I would say that if I had been in the Senate, I would have tried to negotiate a deal which was, we won't filibuster this nomination if you will agree not to go nuclear on subsequent vacancies. I think that would have been something that would have been in Democrats' interest and probably the country's interest, and certainly the institution of the Senate. I think they were negotiating that. I don't know how close they got, but whatever happened, they changed the rules. It's unfortunate, and now for a while, every nomination is going to be very, very partisan.
Because this nuclear option is from here on out, correct?
Well, yes, right. They've changed the rules now, so you can't filibuster a Supreme Court nomination.
Okay, so much more to get to. So here's what we're going to do. You know I can talk to you for 10, 15 minutes. We're going to continue this conversation. I didn't get to ask you about Russia, about Nunez, about Derby season. So we're going to continue our conversation on our Facebook Live feed. It's on Tabby Dozier News or our WHAS 11 page, Facebook as well. So join us there. As far as on air, Congressman, thank you so much for your time.
Good to be with you.
You at home, we will see you after the break. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm